Hello. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living White Rock and our first ever Sunday at home with RevT. It's Sunday, May 13th. Our celebration space at Semiahmoo House is unavailable this morning, so instead, we're stopping by Reverend Terry Shea's home on the Fraser River for a brief visit and a few more of RevT's thoughts on the hero journey, the theme for the next few weeks. Thanks for stopping by.
There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. They say he wandered very far, over land and sea. A little shy, sad of eye, but very wise was he.
When I first moved to Vancouver, I was completely unaware of the fact that there were any mountains here. I moved here for the sea, and I was here for quite some time before people said to me, "What do you think of the mountains?" And I actually had to stop and think, the mountains. Oh yeah, there are mountains. And even now, I'm not somebody who goes to the mountains. I know people who are big time skiers and snowboarders and so on, and it's not my thing. It was very strange when I moved to California because I was living at 3,000 feet. I really was in the mountains at that point. And so what I became aware of suddenly was how much the natural landscape is an outpicturing, or maybe a metaphor for where we are in our lives. In the mountains, I was very much aware of a time in my life when I was becoming more solid and more grounded. And also being able to look out at life from a different perspective. I'd even lived on one of the Gulf Islands for a while, and I was very aware of the turbulence and the storms and all the stuff that was going on, and that's exactly what my life was about at that point. Lots of turbulence, lots of struggle, lots of challenge. So when I moved back from California, when I moved down from the mountaintops, so to speak, I wanted to be at sea level. And so here I am, living on a floating home. Sea level, as you know, is it's variable. It goes up and down, 12, 14, 16 feet every day. And it moves constantly. I've never lived on a river before, and so I'm very aware of the flow of the river around me, underneath me. I'm aware of it in the spring when it runs very heavy. I'm aware of it when the tide turns and when the river starts flowing backwards. The natural environment, I think, is a place, it's certainly one of the most powerful images for our spiritual life that I think we can have or find. Because Carol Pearson talks about it in her book, The Hero Within, and she talks about the innocent. It's not for nothing that as a society we have as our proto-myth, or our most important myth, the creation and the Garden of Eden, and the innocence of those beings living in the Garden of Eden. And when we look at how we view religion and spirituality, a lot of our energy around religion and spirituality is about preserving our innocence, or about regaining that lost innocence. You know, the idea of the fall. Living here, I'm so aware of how the world is and how this environment cannot be looked at as an either-or world. It cannot be looked at as a world of duality, where swans surviving the eagles is a good thing, and dying or being eaten by eagles is a bad thing. When you live in the natural world, and farmers have known this for millennia, that life has a rhythm of its own that is not the rhythm of man. It is not the rhythm we would impose on it. Carol Pearson said something that I found really fascinating. She said, "We cannot live in the good and the bad. We must live in the ambivalence. We must live in that in-between place." In many ways, people think that I live in paradise here. The interesting thing about paradise, or Eden, is that Eden and the return to it is not about a place where we get all of our needs met. That narcissistic approach to God and spirituality and life in general is that life is supposed to provide for me, and God is supposed to take care of me, and my partner, my wife, my husband is supposed to take care of me. But that's not the real meaning of Eden. The real meaning of Eden is that you live in a paradise with a consciousness that all of your needs are met, are always met. Adam and Eve, if you stay with the myth, got kicked out of paradise because they came up with needs that weren't being met. And so they had to get those needs met. The return to paradise, or to Eden, or to fullest and fullness of life that I think we are looking for, is the one where we know, and I say this often in prayer, and I say this often in prayers. I just had a couple contact me and say, would you help us craft a grace before meals for our wedding dinner? And I said, yeah, it's easy. Start like this. All the good gifts have already been given. It is simply ours to receive them. And so we open our lives, we open our hearts to receive the good that is already there. When you're in that place, there are no needs. It is often said that we believe that the world, or God, or life has a giving problem. God, spirit, life, whatever you want to call it, does not have a giving problem. We have a receiving problem.
And then one day, one magic day, he passed my way. And as we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me: the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
Thanks for joining us today. Have a great Sunday and a great week. This video comes from the Center for Spiritual Living White Rock. The center is supported by the donations, gifts, and tithes of its members and friends. If you got value from today's video, please consider stopping by our website and making a donation. Thanks. Stay tuned for more.